Hello everyone, my name's Dan. I've been playing World of Warcraft since about late 2006, getting into hardcore raiding about late Mists of Pandaria. When New World was released, I ended up playing that game solidly for about 3 weeks straight. In today's video, I'm going to be looking at both games, looking at various aspects such as questing, leveling, combat, and seeing which game did it better. Let's get right into it. Starting zones. The introduction zone of New World does a good job of laying out the basic mechanics of the game for a new player. From combat to gathering to crafting, all of this is thrown at you step by step in a relatively well explained manner. This is something that WoW was lacking until the implementation of the Exile's Reach new player experience from levels 1 through 10. After getting through this introductory zone in New World, you are immediately placed into the wider world of the game. Nothing about the first real zone really shows anything about it being a starter zone, other than the level of the mobs that you fight and the quests that you can acquire. The starting experience in both games does a good job of welcoming a new player to the game and giving them a handle on the controls and some of the systems early on. Being a new game, New World is able to cover almost every system that the game has to offer, while WoW is only able to cover the absolute basics in terms of character control, combat, world interaction, and dungeons. However, WoW does do a good job of introducing the newer systems in the most recent expansion, with some introductory quests as the player hits max level. The introductory zones of both games serve their purpose very well, and I don't really see anything that needs to be changed at this moment in time. Quests. Most quests in New World are very straightforward, and are generally split into 4 main categories. Kill X number of enemies, loot X number of chests in a specific area, loot X amount of items from enemies, kill a certain named creature, boss, or mini-boss. Unlike in WoW, there are additional quests available from the in-town adventure boards. These quests do include similar types as the ones that I've just mentioned, but also have a few specific extra types, such as using your crafting professions to make a certain item, or gathering a certain amount of a resource, such as wood, ore, or rawhide. It doesn't take too long for some of these quest types to start becoming very repetitive, which isn't helped by the leveling process being intentionally stalled by story and side quests not giving enough XP to level up into new zones on their own. This is something that I would like to see changed, with the adventure board being usable as an alternative to the side quests, or as a source of experience, or even something to be used mostly by players looking to level their crafting and gathering professions. The questing experience in WoW as far as leveling is concerned is definitely a lot smoother in terms of making it to max level and hitting the end game, whereas New World questing is a content point all of its own. In terms of quest variety, aided by a variety of enemy types, WoW definitely has the upper hand, but whether it does the questing experience better will depend entirely on the player and what they are playing the game for. Combat. The combat in New World follows along the lines of various new MMOs of late, opting for a fully free targeting gameplay experience instead of lock-on tab target combat. This can be a very welcome change for WoW players, as it can serve to keep you a little bit more engaged in the combat while you play, especially if you're using a ranged weapon such as bow, musket, or firestaff. By comparison to WoW, New World has a very stripped down number of abilities available for use, allowing only 3 abilities with any given weapon to be usable out of a possible 6 across the 2 talent trees per weapon. While questing, this is never really a problem, but I did notice that during expeditions, or dungeons, particularly on boss fights, this could end up becoming relatively tedious with just using the same 3 abilities repeatedly. Luckily, some of the later expeditions had some interesting boss mechanics to stop you from hard AFKing too much. Personally, I am a big fan of the newer style of free targeting combat that other MMOs are incorporating, and while it would be nice to see this be added to WoW as well, I doubt it's something that we're going to get anytime soon unless Blizzard decide to release another MMO. PvP. Much like War Mode in WoW, PvP is an opt-in experience in the open world in New World. Of course, just like in WoW, gear and player level can lead to a significant advantage in an open world PvP situation, but due to the combat being so basic, using any weapon is usually fine, and skill plays a bigger factor than actual weapon balancing, apart from the life staff. Faction wars are currently New World's main source of endgame content. It is here that weapon balance and tuning begins to play a bigger factor. You'll be hard pushed to do anything meaningful with a musket or bow, while great axe, hatchet, and life staff wielders tend to have a much bigger impact. Unfortunately, this does lead to a situation where whichever faction has more of the higher tuned weapon wins, which does lead to some very specific player selection for the wars. It is very easy to begin feeling pigeonholed into a certain weapon choice purely for the sake of seeing more of these faction wars. Balance and tuning is always going to be a problem in PvP in any game, even with a significantly stripped down combat system such as New World has. However, just based on PvP availability such as random battlegrounds and arena skirmishes, I do think that WoW has a better grasp of PvP as it stands at the moment. Zones and art style. The art style and graphics of New World are definitely what makes it stand out in its current state. However, while being visually impressive, many of the zones within the game are populated with the same types of enemies. It does allow the player to get a sense of familiarity with these types of enemies and understand their combat behaviour, such as the erratic movements and chain attacks that ghosts can perform, but it does get very samey when playing for long enough. In comparison to World of Warcraft, where the types of enemies can vary quite a lot from zone to zone, even if the new type of enemy doesn't add that much more to the table combat-wise. World of Warcraft definitely takes that extra step with making each of their zones look distinctly different from each other, with entire themes existing throughout each zone. From Classic all the way to Shadowlands, it has been very easy to identify which zone you are in, and even to an extent where in each zone you are relative to the rest of the map, based on various landmarks or even the types of enemies encountered. Something that really stood out in New World for me was the sound design and ambience of the game. It became very easy to get immersed in the game, especially early on, with some of the very realistic sounds of other players chopping trees, mining ore, and how they would echo through nearby mountains and fade appropriately with distance. It's such a simple and subtle thing, but it has served the game incredibly well in terms of immersion and world building. The art team of WoW do fantastic work time and again, and it really is impressive what they can manage with such major limitations working with the same engine for over 15 years. However, New World being a more modern game, it definitely looks a lot more visually impressive, and certainly has an edge when it comes to ambience and in-game immersion. Talents. While WoW has a relatively simple talent system locked to the spec of each class, New World has opted for a talent tree that is linked to each type of weapon a player can use. This simple approach allows a player to maintain one character while being able to swap weapons as they wish, and level a new one up at any time. Leveling a new weapon doesn't affect the damage that weapon can deal in any way other than the number of talents that you have available. Given the player can have 2 weapons equipped at any time, leveling one new weapon at a time is relatively straightforward. To gain experience on any given weapon, you only need to use it once per enemy you kill, allowing you to tag an enemy with your low level weapon and kill it off with your higher level weapon. More level appropriate enemies means more experience, so swapping one weapon at a time is not too big of a hassle. I do like the fact that New World talent systems and even professions allow the player to stick to one character without missing anything in terms of content. This is an approach that Final Fantasy also takes with jobs, which can allow the player to feel more attached with their character instead of having tens of alts like in WoW. While the talent systems of both games are quite straightforward, personally I still miss the long talent trees of Classic WoW, TBC and Wrath. No matter what kind of talent system you implement into a game, min-maxing in general has gotten to a point where many players will want to be the best that they can be, and as such they will go with whatever strongest cookie-cutter build is available in guides at that time. This is something that cannot be avoided outside of homogenizing talent systems across the board, which would ultimately end up being incredibly boring. Professions. WoW is definitely very limiting when it comes to professions, and Shadowlands has done the profession system no favours in terms of its usefulness, with only engineering and alchemy really holding any benefit that isn't just gold making. In New World, every profession is available to the player and can be levelled at any time. In fact, given the adventure board questing system, it is often encouraged to maintain as many professions as you can while levelling. Profession experience and character experience are separate in New World. This means that chopping a tree provides you with experience for your logging profession, as well as a chunk of your experience for your character level. This is especially welcome as it leads to feeling that no action is ever wasted and you're always doing something that will progress your character further. Ultimately, your time never feels wasted. When it comes to professions, New World absolutely does it better. The professions feel meaningful, whether it comes down to crafting new gear, ammunition for your weapon, decorations for your house, food for buffs, or even just for making gold. As it stands right now, only being able to choose 2 professions in WoW seems meaningless. This kind of restriction was fine during a time when professions gave meaningful advantages like the extra gem slot for blacksmiths, or the Synapse Springs glove enchant for engineers, but the current state of professions means having them all wouldn't net any major gain for you as a player. Even worse still, taking none at all wouldn't make much of a difference either. There needs to be a very serious look into the profession system as WoW moves forward. And that's the end of the video. If you got into New World at all, tell me how your experience went down in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to the Method channel to see more content like this in the near future, and hit that notification bell so you can see the moment that we upload. Thank you so much for watching. I've been Dan, and I'll see you in the next one.